Hey everybody, Mike with Crooked Crow Crafting. I've always had an affinity for Gothic architecture, probably because I spent 10 years of my life living in Germany, so I decided to build some Gothic ruins. Halfway through the build, it became a Sisters of Battle Gothic ruin by the addition of some Fleur Di Lis on the outside of the building. So with a little help from Wylock's Armory, I started my build. I hope you enjoy the video. Here's a completed model. I wanted to put it in the beginning because I know not everybody will make it to the end of the build video. Using some heavy chipboard, I started to copy Wylock's ruin build. Using his measurements, I marked off the chipboard. I penciled in 3 1/4 inches horizontally on the chipboard, then rotated and marked 2-inch increments. To center the windows, I measured 3/4 inches up from the 3-inch markings and measured the centers for placing the windows. After that, it was just a matter of tracing the window outlines. I used an image of Gothic windows, sized it appropriately, and cut out a template. I used the same technique later when finding the shape of the buttresses. Next, it was time to cut the shape of the ruin. After everything was cut, it was time to glue the chipboard to some dollar store poster board foam. Of course, the paper was removed from both sides. Eileen's Type Bond was used to glue the foam to the chipboard. I downloaded some black and white clip art of some Gothic architecture which I glued to the chipboard. These were used as jigs for my It's Not a Proxon. Water-thin superglue is the secret ingredient. It hardens the chipboard for use and gives you the ability to sand and shape it. My first cuts were dismal, but once I determined how fast to move the jig through the hot wire, the cuts improved. On my It's Not a Proxon, I have a voltage controller that is set at 12 volts, which works well with the nichrome wire I use. Green insulation foam from Lowe's was used for all the hot wire work. With the corners completed, it was time to try the buttresses. You can see I taped the template to the foam to help hold it in position. Using a piece of aluminum tube, I cut a starter hole so I can cut the rest of the buttress. This involves unmounting the nichrome wire and threading it through the hole. Now it's time to make some brickwork on a foam. I measured and pre-marked the size of the rows and then indented the foam with a random tool I had laying around. You can see in the zoomed image the pre-marked layers for the bricks. As the windows were all just a little bit different, I built the frames in the spaces instead of building them and then inserting them. I used super glue and an accelerator. I've since rebottled the super glue and accelerator in dropper bottles to make it easier. You can see this in some upcoming videos. You can see this is time consuming, but I don't have a 3D printer and I wanted to add some dimension to the build. With a little bit of measuring, I was able to start texturing the buttresses. I started by lightly scoring with a hobby knife and then followed up with my random tool. This helped to radius the edges and give it a natural look. Now it was time to give a natural surface to everything. Out comes the aluminum foil. Once done, it was time to install the cornice and buttresses. The wall sections with the buttresses would be the sides of the building, and I imagined the small door to be at the back of the building. I didn't make a front facade with a large door in this build. Now it was time to go 3D. I cut some good poster board, not the dollar store type, into a random shape for the different floors and hot glued the wall sections, ensuring they were square. I hot glued a column to one wall section prior to attaching two sections together. It took a little bracing to ensure that everything was square while the hot glue set. I used good poster board for the base and marked it in preparation for gluing the walls into place. The buttresses seemed to be missing something, so I added bases to them. They looked much better. I had been thinking about the history of this ruin and decided that it should be a Sisters of Battle building. I bought some cheap Fleur Di Lis charms, cut off the tops, and decorated the front and back of the building ruins. Another thought occurred to me at my oldest daughter's wedding. Little treat boxes were given to everybody at the reception, and I thought these would look great as floor tiles. Knowing how crazy the Sisters of Battle are, this place didn't fall into ruin without a fight, so I added some craters to the pavement around the building. I did glue chipboard under the poster board base so it didn't weaken it to cut out the craters. Next, I added some broken pieces around the base. Also notice I put in some pavers at the back entrance. Since there was a battle, why not some bolter damage? I used a hollow brass tube, a hobby knife, and my random tool. I made some large and some small. To add concrete damage on the inside, I used pine bark. I sealed everything with the standard black Mod Podge primer, then in gray spray primer. Using the Sisters of Battle colors, I painted the floors crimson red and the tiles black. I glued down the tile pieces by painting white glue on the floor before placing them. Dark gray was used for the concrete pieces and edges of the ruined floors. I also dry brushed the interior walls and floors with dark gray. Hazy Moon was used to dry brush edge highlights on the floor in concrete. Silver Frost was the final dry brush highlight. To tone everything down, I applied a homemade black wash. Thanks Black Magic Craft for the recipe. To randomly color the stone on the outside of the walls, I used Snow White, True Blue, Burnt Umber, Cafe Latte, and Dark Chocolate. Then I applied a dry brush of Gray Frost. Notice the pavers at the door have been painted for undercoating and are awaiting dry brushing. Time to black wash the walls. I painted some paper clips white to simulate rebar in the floor. I painted them with Citadel Typhus Corrosion, the Typhus Corrosion left a nice rebar texture by painting across the paper clips. The Fleur Di Lis were painted with Vallejo bronze and then aged with Citadel Nihilak oxide. There was a small accident, but I was able to recover most of the nihilic oxide. I added some different sized grass tufts and leaves to complete the look. Everything was sprayed with a rattle can matte varnish to complete the build. I hope you enjoyed the video and maybe found some techniques or ideas that you can use in your own builds. Please give the video a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.